She walked into the dealership in jeans and a plain white t-shirt, asking about a luxury car. The salesman gave her a condescending look. "I think you're in the wrong place," he sneered, motioning toward the exit. "These cars start at $300,000. Staff chuckled, customers stared, and her cheeks burned with humiliation. She left quietly. The next morning, a sleek Rolls Royce Phantom pulled up to the dealership. When the back door opened, the arrogant salesman's jaw nearly hit the floor. He never saw it coming. Boston Luxury Motors gleamed in the sunlight, its glass walls showcasing dream machines, Porsches, Bentleys, Ferraris, Aston Martins. Inside, Margaret Collins, known simply as Maggie, walked in. Ponytail bouncing, no makeup, worn sneakers, simple clothes. She carried herself with quiet confidence. At 35, Maggie was far from ordinary. She was the founder of the Collins Foundation for Children with Disabilities, a nonprofit that had changed thousands of lives. Her wealth was real, though hidden behind a modest lifestyle. Her eyes went straight to a midnight blue coupe, the perfect birthday gift for her sister Caroline, who had beaten cancer last year. Maggie could easily afford it. Across the showroom, sales manager Blake Thompson spotted her. Polished suit, smug grin, he thought he knew exactly who was worth his time. Seeing Maggie's casual look, he smirked at his colleagues. This would be entertaining. "Good morning," Maggie said kindly as a young salesman, Daniel, greeted her. But before she could respond, Blake slid in. "I'll take it from here," he said smoothly, flashing a fake smile. "Looking for directions, ma'am?" Maggie didn't flinch. "Actually, I'm interested in that midnight blue coupe." She pointed at the $285,000 car. Blake's expression tightened. He'd seen this before. Dreamers wasting his time. "That model is the Azure, limited edition. Only 15 exist this year. Reserved for serious clients, by appointment only." His tone dripped with dismissal. A wealthy-looking couple walked in, and Blake instantly abandoned Maggie. "Mr. and Mrs. Harrington, welcome back," he beamed, rushing over. Daniel stayed with Maggie, clearly embarrassed. "I can tell you about the Azure if you'd like," he offered nervously. "Thank you," Maggie smiled warmly. But as Daniel explained, Maggie noticed Blake opening the Azure for the Harringtons, inviting them inside the very car he claimed was appointment only. She stepped closer. "Excuse me," she said firmly. "I'd like to discuss purchasing this car." Blake's patience snapped. Lowering his voice, he hissed, "Listen, this isn't a fantasy showroom. That car costs more than most houses. Stop interrupting real customers." By now, other shoppers had stopped to watch. "I'm prepared to pay in cash today," Maggie replied calmly. Blake barked out a cruel laugh, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Cash? This isn't a yard sale. People who buy these cars don't dress like—" He waved at her outfit with disdain. The room went silent. Maggie's face didn't fall. Her anger only deepened. Not for herself, but for everyone who had ever been judged by appearances. "My money," she said steadily, "is worth the same as anyone else's." Blake stepped closer, sneering. "Let me be clear. You're wasting my time. Either come back properly dressed for a serious discussion, or leave." The Harringtons quietly backed away. The entire showroom froze, waiting for what would happen next. "Is there a problem here?" A firm new voice cut through the tension. The dealership's owner, Richard Mason, had been drawn by the commotion. Blake straightened his tie. "No problem, sir. Just explaining to this lady that we work by appointment. Only for serious buyers." Richard's eyes flicked over Maggie, her simple clothes, and the onlookers gathered nearby. His cool expression made it clear whose side he was on. "I see. Miss Collins," she supplied. "Margaret Collins." "Miss Collins," Richard repeated carefully. "Perhaps there's been a misunderstanding. Our clientele usually understands the exclusivity of our vehicles." "I understand perfectly," Maggie replied, her voice steady even as humiliation burned inside her. "Your sales manager has made your policies crystal clear." Blake stepped forward, smirking. If you're genuinely interested, which I doubt, you can make an appointment. But I'd suggest bringing proof of funds and dressing the part. These cars, he swept a hand across the glittering showroom, are meant for a certain class of people. A ripple of laughter ran through the crowd. Maggie glanced at the smirks, at Blake's self-satisfied grin, and at the owner's silent approval. She had faced discrimination before, but rarely this openly, this publicly. "I see," she said again, her dignity unbroken, though her spirit was bruised. Turning on her heel, she walked toward the exit behind her. Blake's voice carried just far enough. Some people really don't know their place. Outside in the sunlight, Maggie pulled out her phone. The sting of humiliation lingered, but a small, determined smile spread across her lips. She dialed home. The Collins estate sat on 5 quiet acres outside Boston. Its understated elegance hid the billions behind it, exactly as Alexander Collins preferred. At 41, the tech visionary had revolutionized renewable energy storage, building a global empire while avoiding the spotlight. When Maggie entered his office, Alexander looked up immediately. 15 years of marriage meant he could read her expression without a word. Something was wrong. "What happened?" he asked. Coming around the desk, Maggie sank into the leather chair, her morning ordeal replaying in her mind. "It was educational," she said with a faint smile. Then she told him everything, the sneers, the humiliation, the blatant discrimination. Alexander's jaw tightened, though he stayed silent, letting her speak. "It's not about me," Maggie concluded. "I can walk away knowing the truth. But how many people get treated like that every day without the comfort of knowing they could afford what's being denied to them?" That was what had always moved him most. Her instinct to think of others, even when she had been wronged. "So," Alexander asked quietly, "what do you want to do about it?" "Part of me wants to do nothing," she admitted. "Buy Caroline's gift elsewhere. But then I think of that young salesman, Daniel, who treated me with respect. And I think of everyone else who doesn't have the power to push back. They need to learn that worth isn't measured by appearances. I don't want revenge, I want awareness." Alexander leaned forward, a plan forming. "I think I know a way to accomplish both." "Nothing too dramatic," Maggie warned. "No buying the dealership and firing everyone." He chuckled. "No, cliches. But maybe a little education." Together, they devised a plan, not for revenge, but for enlightenment. A lesson the dealership would never forget. "Are you sure you don't want to be there?" Alexander asked as they finalized the details. "This isn't about me needing to see their reaction," she said softly. "It's about them learning to see past appearances. But," she added with a faint grin, "I expect a full report." That evening, Alexander made a few quiet phone calls. By morning, Boston Luxury Motors would face a powerful lesson in humility and the danger of judging too quickly. The next day dawned clear and bright. Blake strutted into work, adjusting his trademark blue tie. Yesterday's incident with the underdressed woman had already become a funny story he told over drinks. Another dreamer who thought she belonged in the world of luxury. The showroom gleamed under perfect lighting, exotic cars arranged like jewels. Blake wrapped up the staff meeting, reminding his team of his golden rule: qualify the customer. "Our time is valuable. We cater to a very specific clientele. That's not elitism, it's efficiency." Daniel, the young salesman, stayed quiet, discomfort written all over his face. Blake made a mental note to train him later. Then, at exactly 10:17 a.m. A sound silenced the room, the low, commanding purr of an engine outside. Through the glass wall, an extraordinary car rolled up to the entrance. Even Blake felt his heart race. A Rolls Royce Phantom extended wheelbase. Not just any Phantom. This was a one-of-a-kind midnight blue custom build that shimmered differently in the light. Its value easily topped $1.2 million. "Is that?" Richard Mason, the owner, had rushed out of his office. "Yes," Blake breathed, already hurrying to the door. "That's the bespoke Phantom." A uniformed chauffeur stepped out, white gloves immaculate, and opened the rear door with practiced precision. From the car emerged a man of commanding presence. Tall, sharp suit that whispered money without flaunting it. Salt and pepper hair, posture that radiated authority. Blake's instincts went wild. This was more than a client. This was the kind of man who could buy multiple cars, maybe the entire showroom. "Good morning, sir. Welcome to Boston Luxury Motors." Blake beamed, stepping in front of everyone else. "Blake Thompson, sales manager. It's an honor to have you with us." The man regarded Blake with an unreadable expression, then offered a polite smile that never reached his eyes. "Alexander Collins," he said simply, extending a firm handshake. Blake's mind spun. The name tickled something familiar, but he couldn't place it. No matter. The Rolls Royce alone spoke volumes about the man's wealth. "Mr. Collins, an honor," Blake said quickly. "What brings you to our dealership today? Perhaps I could show you our latest arrivals. We've just received a limited edition." Alexander lifted a hand, silencing the pitch. "Actually, I'm here for a specific vehicle. The Azure Coupe, midnight blue." Blake's grin widened. "An excellent choice, sir. Only 15 made this year. I'd be delighted to—" "I know where it is," Alexander interrupted smoothly. "My wife was here yesterday. She expressed interest in it." Blake's smile faltered. "Your wife?" "I don't recall. Perhaps one of my colleagues assisted her." Alexander's eyes hardened. "No, Mr. Thompson, you assisted her, or rather, you refused to. Margaret Collins, jeans, white t-shirt. You suggested she might be more comfortable looking at used cars." The color drained from Blake's face. Behind him, Daniel, the young salesman, let out a sharp breath. "Mr. Collins, Blake stammered, words failing him. "Surely some misunderstanding. Our dealership welcomes all customers." By then, Richard Mason had arrived, sensing trouble. "Is everything all right here?" Alexander turned his gaze. "Mr. Mason, I presume?" "Yes," Richard said, quickly. "Richard Mason, welcome to Boston Luxury Motors." "Thank you," Alexander replied coolly. "I was just explaining that my wife came here yesterday, hoping to purchase the Azure as a gift for her sister. Instead, she was humiliated." Richard's smile faltered. I recall a brief exchange, yes. I wasn't aware of the full situation." "The full situation," Alexander said evenly, "is that your sales manager decided she didn't belong here, based solely on her clothes. That is unacceptable." A hush fell over the room. Salespeople, assistants, even a few early customers froze, their eyes locked on the confrontation. "Mr. Collins," Blake began, desperation breaking through. "It wasn't a misunderstanding," Daniel blurted suddenly. Every head turned. His voice trembled, but he pressed on. Mrs. Collins was polite. She knew exactly what she wanted, and she was dismissed again and again, just because of how she looked. Blake shot him a venomous glare, but the damage was done. Alexander faced Mason again. "It's ironic. My wife runs the Collins Foundation, which provides care and education for children with disabilities. She's raised over $50 million for medical equipment and programs. She chooses to live simply, because it keeps her grounded in her work. That modesty, the very thing your sales manager sneered at, is one of the reasons I love her." Richard Mason had gone pale. "Mr. Collins, please. This doesn't reflect the values of our dealership. We pride ourselves on— Values are measured by actions, not slogans." Alexander cut in. Blake, desperate, clung to a shred of hope. "Sir, if you'll allow me, perhaps we can make this right with the Azure." Alexander's voice stayed, calm but sharp. "I was planning to purchase the Azure, yes, as well as replacing our corporate fleet, 7 vehicles, and I intended to expand my personal collection." Richard's eyes widened. That single transaction could carry the dealership's quarterly numbers. "But now," Alexander continued, "I have to wonder if this establishment deserves such an investment." The silence was suffocating. Blake looked ready to collapse. "Mr. Collins," Richard pleaded, "please, Allow us a chance to make this right. Alexander considered, then nodded slightly. Perhaps there's a way forward. But it requires more than a sale. Anything, Richard said quickly. The Collins Foundation is hosting a benefit gala next month, Alexander said. We're raising funds for a new adaptive sports complex for children with disabilities. Mr. Thompson? He turned, locking eyes with Blake. Your presence would be educational. Blake swallowed. Of course, sir. As a guest, I'd be honored. Not as a guest, Alexander interrupted. As a volunteer, helping with setup, assisting the children, seeing firsthand the work that matters. The weight of the words crashed down on Blake. And Mr. Mason, Alexander added, you might also consider unconscious bias training for your staff. I know several excellent consultants. Yes, absolutely, Mason stammered. As for the vehicles. Alexander turned at last to Daniel, who stood frozen in disbelief. You'll handle the paperwork, starting with the Azure for my sister-in-law. Me? Sir, thank you. I'd be honored. Good. Alexander's tone softened. He brushed a hand along the sleek midnight curve of the Azure. My wife has remarkable taste, don't you think? As he and Richard moved toward the office, the showroom remained still. Blake Thompson stood rooted in place, his perfect composure shattered. For the first time, he understood the truth. In trying to measure someone's worth by appearance, he had revealed his own. It's not how he treated those he thought important, but how he treated those he believed were not. 1 month later, the Collins Foundation Gala transformed the Grand Boston Hotel into a celebration of hope. Children with disabilities laughed and played while their families mingled with donors, doctors, and supporters. Near the entrance, Blake Thompson stood in a staff uniform, not his sharp-tailored suits. He directed guests, helped families find their seats, and bent down to adjust the wheelchair of a smiling young boy. What began as an obligation had become something else. Volunteering had humbled him, reshaped him. Every child's courage chipped away at his old arrogance, replacing it with something he hadn't felt in years. Respect. Across the ballroom, Maggie Collins approached in a simple blue dress. Even now, her grace carried no hint of pretension. How are you finding the experience, Blake? She asked gently. He took a moment before answering. Humbling and necessary. Maggie smiled softly. Thomas seems to have taken a liking to you. She nodded toward the boy in the wheelchair. Blake chuckled. He's teaching me adaptive basketball. Apparently my form is terrible. Her laugh was genuine, warm. Then Blake's expression grew serious. Mrs. Collins, I've apologized before, but I need to say it to you directly. I am truly sorry for how I treated you. There's no excuse. You're right, Maggie said plainly, though without anger. There isn't. The real question is, what have you learned? That worth isn't determined by appearance, status, or wealth, Blake replied, and that respect should be given until someone proves they don't deserve it, not the other way around. Good lessons, Maggie said. Expensive ones, too. Blake nodded, thinking of the massive business Alexander had withheld from the dealership. Worth every penny, he admitted. Alexander Collins soon joined them, resting a hand on his wife's shoulder. Blake was just sharing his insights, Maggie explained. Alexander studied him. I hear you've become quite involved in the adaptive sports program. Yes, sir, Blake said earnestly. I've signed on to continue volunteering even after my required period. And I've been working with Mr. Mason to revamp how we treat customers. No more judging by appearances. Alexander nodded approvingly. I'm glad to hear it. Which reminds me about that corporate fleet I mentioned. We're still in the market. Perhaps you could handle that transaction. Daniel tells me you've been mentoring him. Blake froze, then slowly smiled with genuine gratitude. Mr. Collins, I'd be honored, truly honored. Later that evening, as the event wound down, Blake watched Maggie and Alexander move through the crowd, not flaunting their wealth, but connecting genuinely with each child and family. He thought about how different he was a month ago, how easily he would have dismissed Maggie on sight. Now he knew better. As he helped Thomas back into his wheelchair after a photo, the boy grinned up at him. "You know what, Mr. Blake? You're pretty cool for a grown-up." Blake laughed softly. "Coming from you, Thomas, that's the best compliment I've had in years." And he meant it, because in the end, we all make judgments based on appearances. But Blake Thompson had learned. When you look past the surface, you may discover extraordinary people and life-changing opportunities. If this story touched you, hit subscribe and join our community of story lovers. Have you ever been misjudged or judged someone else too quickly? Share your story in the comments below. And remember, true wealth isn't measured by money, but by how you treat others when you think no one important is watching. See you in our next story, where another powerful lesson awaits.